And one big question, while all of this is happening, how is Trump going to handle a criminal trial? Joining us to discuss is former Trump attorney and longtime federal prosecutor Jim Trusty. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, good to see you, Katie.
Trump, perhaps for the first time, got a close-up look at what jury selection looks like and heard some very personal details and sometimes very sharp opinions from a lot of New Yorkers this week. What do you think is going through his mind, having sat through that and now knowing we have a jury?
Yeah, it's a pretty surrealistic experience when you're the defendant. I mean, no matter what their profile, they're watching these people get asked questions by both sides. They're trying to figure out, will this person be remotely fair to me? It plays on stereotypes. You know, what do you think about the outlook of a college professor, for instance? Does an engineer want mathematical certainty to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt? I mean, there's all sorts of kind of trite assumptions that get made. But I will say at the end of the day, jury selection has always been, more art than science. It's very difficult. And in this case, you did a great job laying out the process. This is what's called hybrid voir dire, meaning it's not just the judge asking questions, it's the parties. And that does a lot of things in this case. It puts a ton of pressure on President Trump's lawyers to sniff out the people that didn't self-excuse, that didn't basically come into it and say, there's no way I can be fair. I have to think in today's world, a lot of these folks that are potential jurors are thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm happy to be a part of that trial. Not usually the case for jury selection, jury duty, but I think there's a real potential for sleepers, for people that want to get on, that do not like President Trump because they're in New York, and that will do a lot more damage to this process because of their predilections about President Trump than their willingness to listen to evidence. And if you're an attorney, you got 15 minutes to basically explore that and see if you can get them struck for cause. Otherwise, it's one of those peremptory challenges. And Trump's lawyers run out of peremptory challenges real quick with the New York jury pool.
Right. We've seen Todd Blanche have to sometimes elbow the former president to put his phone away. At one point, Judge Marchand told him to talk to his client after it appeared that Trump was speaking to a prospective juror who was dismissed. What is it like to try and manage this client in particular in a room like this and during a criminal trial? What do you think is going through his attorneys' minds?
Well, I think they've got to focus primarily on the task at hand, which is doing their very best to navigate the jury selection and to expose the people that should be struck. I mean, look, when you really think about it, for 4 or 5 days worth of really long days of sitting in court and going through jury selection, it's not any real surprise that there'll be a few flashpoints, a few moments where either the lawyer gets frustrated, the client gets frustrated, or the judge gets frustrated. I don't think there's a whole lot to this one. I mean, there's just hasn't been anything particularly dramatic or particularly damaging in terms of President Trump's behavior. And, of course, it's going to get reported on like it's the most exciting thing of the day. But when you talk about the sheer amount of minutes in that courtroom and the paucity of events that involve President Trump during that, I think that's okay. And by the way, if I'm his lawyer, I'm saying to him, like, this is not the time to pick the fight with the courthouse. So what you don't want to do is run the risk of alienating that final jury pool by acting as if you disrespect this process. So I think he's probably going to be on pretty good behavior during the trial itself because the stakes are so high and because his lawyers are probably telling him, like, we cannot afford to alienate the jury by acting like we're discontented with the process so far.
What do you think they're telling him about the gag order? He seems to be towing the line a little bit there with some of the items in the gag order.
Yeah, I mean, look, the gag order is really frustrating. You think about it, gag orders are constitutionally suspect from the start. There's a real strong presumption against gag orders. I think when the trial gets started, in a sense, it gets easier to not worry about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, everybody's going to be focusing on the merits of the trial. But number two, if the jury is told, like I'm sure they are every day, do not pay attention to any media, do not read any stories or search online or do anything, then by definition, it's harmless. Whatever President Trump did, even if it violates the gag order, it's not affecting the jury pool because they've been instructed and they've sworn an oath that they're not going to pay attention to any of the media accounts. So again, if you're his lawyer, you tell him, I understand we're in a political lane at the same time as criminal justice, but, do not get precise about the jurors. Don't say anything that alienates them from us no matter what, even if they're not hearing it. And I think he'll probably adhere to that.
Well, former Trump attorney Jim Trusty, longtime prosecutor, thank you for your perspective on the show. We'll have to have you back as the trial continues.
Sure, sounds good.